Welcome, listener, in the shadows. We bring stories into the light. Join me as we explore the encounters no one speaks of and the things that watch from the dark. If you're still here after all that, you already know the kind of stories we tell. The kind that crawl under your skin, that echo in the quiet when the episode ends. If you want to carry a piece of that darkness with you, wear what haunts you. Our exclusive line of merch is made for listeners who feel more at home in the uncanny, the unspoken, the things that don't make sense in the daylight. Shirts, hoodies, and other gear, designed with that same atmosphere of dread, mystery, and whispered wrongness. Candles support the channel, feed the stories. You can grab yours at https://theshadowsprintify me, and as always, don't look behind you. The Wind Tells on You, Chapter 1. The blockade. The cold out here didn't just bite, it inhaled. Like the land itself was waiting to speak again. Officer Ray Tallhorse pulled his cruiser off the main road and stared at the rusting blockade ahead. Two posts of bent rebar, duct-taped with faded tribal warnings, and a hanging sign, hand-painted decades ago in trembling brushstrokes. Closed during shift wind. Do not listen. The words shift wind were underlined 3 times. Red paint flaked off like dried blood. Ray sighed and shut the engine off. The sudden silence was immense. The kind that sat heavy on your shoulders, pressing down. He could hear the wind brushing over the bluffs in slow, rhythmic bursts, not howling, not whistling, just moving. This road had been officially closed for 30 winters. Unplowed, unmonitored. Elders said the wind that gathered between the canyon ridges during freeze season carried more than just ice. They claimed it echoed with voices, not all of them dead. Ray was here because of a call, an off-the-books one. Earlier that morning, an old man named Joseph Spotted Elk had come into the station half frozen, teeth chattering and one eye swollen shut. No car, no shoes. He'd walked from somewhere off that road, refused to speak until they gave him hot tea and a blanket. Then just one phrase. The wind told me he's still lying. Ray knew Joseph, had since he was a boy. The man had long since gone half feral, talking in riddles and ghost signs. But that line, that one sentence, hit like a slap. Because Ray was lying. About something no one should know. About what happened with Tommy. He shifted in his seat and checked the radio. Still dead. No bars, static only. His phone battery had drained faster than it should have. Weather didn't explain it. Nothing did. Just a look, he muttered to himself, reaching for his jacket. 1 trip, 1 mile in, I see nothing, I come back. Done. He got out, boots crunching into the hard-packed snow. The air was dry and sharp, every breath like inhaling glass. Behind him, the cruiser ticked and cooled. He stepped past the barrier. The snow was wrong here. Not deeper, not cleaner, just too still. No wind at his back now, just the sense of it waiting. Half a mile in, he saw the totems. Simple things, animal bones tied with black ribbon, hanging from wooden spikes buried in the snow. Some had cracked open. Others looked fresh. Red stains curled beneath a few, frozen into spiderweb patterns. Ray had seen protection charms like this before. Elders still left them outside homes, especially for babies or veterans prone to sleepwalking. But here in the open snow, in this place, he stopped, listened, stillness. Then Raymond. He froze, not loud, not distant. The voice was so close it might have been whispered beside his cheek. Soft, familiar, his mother's voice. He turned. No one, no footprints but his own, no animals, no wind. He swallowed hard. This is bullshit, he said louder now. It's a story, a myth. But the next gust came in warm, unseasonably warm like breath, like a mouth exhaling against the back of his neck. And with it, tell her what happened that day. Ray's stomach dropped. He took 2 steps back, looked behind him. Nothing. Suddenly he needed to leave. Now. He turned and began walking fast, too fast, back toward the cruiser. Only the totems were gone. The trees were wrong. Branches too close. Bark etched with symbols he didn't recognize, but they felt familiar, scratched in circles, hooked lines. His boots didn't make sound anymore. The snow was absorbing it, or maybe his ears were. Then, a scream, short, sharp, childlike. He spun around, no one. But the air was full of breath. Every exhale he took was echoed. delayed, answered, a mimic. You left him, the wind said. Ray dropped to one knee. His head throbbed. His scar pulsed under the temple, the old one from the crash when he was 11. He didn't fall, you pushed him. The words weren't shouted. They weren't cruel. They were calm, true. The way a confession feels when it stops being fought. Ray stood. His hands were shaking. He didn't remember pulling the gun, but it was in his hand now. Not real, he said. Just a story, cold air in the brain. But he was sweating. The path back looked longer than the path forward now, a trick of the eye. Or the story. He picked the way home. But when he finally stepped past the barrier again, his cruiser wasn't there. The snow behind him, undisturbed, like no one had walked it in years. Chapter 2, what she heard. Ray didn't remember the walk back. One moment he was knee-deep in snow, the whisper of his mother's voice riding the frost like a funeral dirge. The next, he stood in front of his house, headlights off, knuckles white around the steering wheel. Had he driven? The gas gauge hadn't moved. The dashboard clock blinked 2:17 a.m., same as it had when he'd parked by the barrier hours ago. His hands were trembling, not from cold, from remembering, but not like memory usually works. This was deeper, inside the spine. It wasn't just remembering what happened to Tommy that winter. It was like the moment had grown roots again, blooming with thorns. Ray opened the door, boots crunching on his frozen gravel driveway. The wind had followed him home. He could feel it under his coat, sliding between the buttons like fingers, whispering not into his ear, but through his bones. You took the high ridge path. You said it was quicker. He gritted his teeth and pushed open the front door. The house was quiet, too quiet. No humming refrigerator, no ticking clock, just a vacuum of silence that felt expectant. The hallway lights were off, but there was a soft glow coming from Leona's room, her nightlight, shaped like a turtle. She'd had it since her mother left, said she couldn't sleep without it. Ray stood in the doorway. Leona was sitting up in bed, arms tucked around her knees, wide awake. "Hey," he said softly, stepping inside. "It's late. Did I wake you?" She didn't respond, just stared at him, not angry, not scared, something worse, distant. Her eyes were glassy, lips parted, and she looked as if she'd been crying for hours without making a sound. Ray crouched beside the bed. "Hey, kiddo, talk to me." Leona didn't blink. Her voice came small, quiet, like someone reading from the bottom of a well. "The wind told me what you did." His chest clenched. A cold spike slid between his ribs. "What?" Her lower lip trembled, but she didn't look away. The voices, they were outside my window, scratching on the glass. I tried to cover my ears, but they came through my skin. Ray sat down hard on the edge of the bed, feeling like the air had left the room. It was too much. Coincidence. His brain, it had to be making connections where there weren't any. "You were dreaming," he said. "You're safe, whatever you heard." You pushed him. The words hit like a stone to the chest. Leona's voice didn't change. Still soft, still empty. "You said it was an accident, but the wind said your hand moved first." Ray's mouth went dry. "I was a kid," he whispered before he could stop himself. Silence. "I didn't mean to. We were just playing. I told him not to climb so high. It was slippery and—" "You lied, Daddy." The word Daddy hadn't sounded like that since she was 4, like a title being revoked. The wind said the snow was red. Ray's eyes strung. He stood up too fast, knocking the nightlight sideways. Shadows danced across the room in lurching shapes. "Go to sleep," he said, more harshly than he meant. "We'll talk in the morning." Leona turned her face away from him, curling back beneath the covers like a withering leaf. Not scared, not sad, just finished. Ray backed into the hallway. The floorboards creaked under his weight, but the sound felt delayed, like it wasn't quite synced with his movement. He walked to the kitchen. Coffee, something to hold, something to ground him. As he poured the water, he noticed the window over the sink was open half an inch. Snowflakes blew inward, melting in the sink like tiny messages. There were scratches in the frost on the inside of the glass, like finger trails, curved, repeating. A symbol. He leaned in. It wasn't just random motion. It was a glyph, one he'd seen on the tree bark earlier. Carved in, hooked and looping like a snare. He wiped it away. The kettle screamed behind him. He jumped. The sound didn't stop when he turned it off. The scream continued, not metallic anymore, human, from inside the house. Ray ran down the hall. Leona's door was wide open. She wasn't in bed, but the window was wide now. Frost blown in all over the floor. Tracks in the snow outside. Bare feet. Chapter 3. The Confession Tree. The cold didn't bite, it invaded. Ray barely noticed the crunch of snow beneath his boots as he sprinted through the backyard, flashlight beam trembling wildly through the woods behind the house. Bare branches clawed at the sky. The wind didn't howl, it whispered. Every direction, every word. Tell her the truth. You told me he slipped. The well remembers. It saw you push. Ray stopped short, chest heaving, flashlight catching on a disturbance in the snow ahead. Small footprints leading toward the tree line. They weren't erratic or panicked. They were calm, deliberate, as if Leona had followed someone who'd called her by name. He followed. The path narrowed between old pine and cedar, the air thick with the smell of wet bark and earth rot. His breath came in bursts. The wind didn't fight him, it guided. And then the clearing. It shouldn't have been there, not this close, not untouched by the recent snowstorm. But there it was. A circular grove, flat and exposed, its center dominated by an ancient, blackened tree. It looked half-burned, but its branches still stretched wide like pleading arms. Its bark was scored with symbols, old and angular, the same as the ones that had appeared in the frost on his kitchen window. Beneath the tree, Leona. She stood barefoot in her pajamas, eyes wide but dry, hands folded like she was in church. She didn't flinch when Ray stumbled into the clearing. "Leona," he breathed, stepping forward. "It's freezing, we need to." She raised a finger to her lips. S-H-H-H-H. Behind her, the tree moved, not the wind, not a trick of the eyes. The bark split slightly near its base, revealing a seam like a scar parting open. Inside, something pulsed, a heart or something that remembered being one. "This is where they come," Leona whispered. "To unburden." Ray blinked. "What?" She turned slowly toward the tree, laying her palm flat against it. The bark didn't resist. It accepted her. Sap welled up under her hand like tears. "You never told me about Tommy," she said without looking at him. Ray's legs went weak. You were too young." "No, you were scared." The wind gusted, and in it, his mother's voice again. "He slipped. You told me that so many times you started to believe it." Ray shook his head, stepping back, tears stinging now in the corners of his eyes. "You don't understand. We were just playing. He said he could make it across the ridge. I told him to stop. I warned him. But when he laughed at you," Leona turned now, voice dead calm, "you shoved him." The clearing dimmed, as if the moonlight itself had thinned. Ray collapsed to his knees. The tree groaned. From the branches above, things began to lower. Strings, threads, no hair. And at the end of each, small tokens. A sock, a toy car, a lock of faded blonde hair. Items suspended in silence, each a confession, each an offering to the listening tree. Ray saw them and remembered. This wasn't a legend. It was a truth buried in local shame, never spoken but always known. A place where guilt didn't rot, it rooted. He saw now. Carvings circling the tree's trunk, each etched by different hands. A boy's scrawl. A father's shaking script, a woman's desperate scratch. This was a ledger of sins whispered into wind and fed to wood. Leona stepped back from the tree and looked at him with something like pity. "It doesn't want you dead," she said. "It wants you honest." Ray covered his face. "I was a kid." He wept into the snow. "I didn't mean it, I swear. I thought he'd catch himself, but he didn't." Silence. Then, roots shifting underground, the tree inhaled and whispered one word back. "Finally." The symbols on the trunk lit faintly, not with flame, but with memory. The hair threads above him shimmered. Ray raised his head, chest heaving. Leona approached and touched his hand. He felt warmth, and it wasn't hers. It was his own, returning. Something he hadn't felt since he buried it that day on the ridge. He could breathe again, but only for a moment, because the wind was shifting, and from deeper in the woods came a new voice, one he didn't recognize, but it knew his name. Chapter 4, The Ridge Never Forgets. Ray didn't speak a word on the way back to the house. Leona walked beside him barefoot, unbothered by the cold, her hand loose in his. Her eyes stayed fixed ahead, not afraid, not even dazed, just calm. like she'd accepted something, like something had accepted her. When they reached the back steps, Ray stopped and crouched down. "Your feet," but her soles were clean. Not just clean, dry, no blood, no frostbite, no trace she'd ever stepped foot in the woods at all. She tilted her head. "You should tell Mom," Ray froze. "What? About Tommy?" He stood slowly, throat tightening. "Leona, Mom's gone. You know that." Leona blinked. Her mouth opened like she was about to say something else, but instead, she just nodded and walked inside. Ray didn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed long after Leona had drifted off in hers, the floorboards creaking with every step he didn't take. The wind never stopped, not how it should have. It moved through the cracks in the siding like breath, searching like it wasn't done with him yet. He thought about the tree, the way it pulsed like a wound, the way it listened. "The ridge," he whispered. It had been over 20 years, but the memory hit now with crisp, cold clarity. It was early March. The ice had started to crack, but not break. Tommy had dared him to race across the creek at the top of Grave Ridge, a stretch of dead trees and limestone spines. Ray was 12, Tommy barely 9. The water below had been loud, swollen with snowmelt. Ray remembered yelling, not out of malice, but from the sheer, dumb thrill of it. That's what he told himself for years. But he remembered pushing, just enough to throw Tommy off balance, just enough to see him fall, arms flailing. And then, gone, just the sound of rushing water. He told the sheriff Tommy got too close to the edge. The body wasn't found for 3 weeks, lodged in a channel a mile downriver. Closed casket. The whole town mourned, but no one blamed Ray. He was just a kid. But the tree, the wind, hadn't forgotten. The next morning he drove out to Grave Ridge. The access road had been shut off years ago, but Ray kept bolt cutters in the trunk, an old habit from his patrol days. The chain fell away with a groan, and he drove the rest of the way on foot, shotgun slung across his back out of instinct. The woods here were deeper, wilder. This wasn't county-maintained forest. It was land too stubborn to be tamed. And as he stepped deeper, the wind changed again. It recognized him. Whispers started low. Familiar but wrong, not just voices, moments, echoes. "You said you'd catch me. I'm slipping. Ray, help." He stumbled forward, hand gripping the shotgun stock so tight his knuckles blanched. "You're not supposed to still be here," came a voice behind him. He spun, but there was nothing, not nothing, a figure. At the edge of the trees, small, barefoot, clothes soaked. Tommy, his little brother, dripping river water, arms pale and long. Staring at Ray with hollow sockets, Ray stepped back. No, that's not possible." Tommy didn't speak with his mouth. The wind did. The ridge never forgets. The well only drinks silence. But the wind tells. Ray dropped the gun. He turned and ran. Not out of cowardice, out of shame. Out of the knowing that he wasn't being haunted. He was being remembered. And the remembering had only just begun. Chapter 5. Every silence is listening. Ray didn't remember getting back to the truck. One moment, he was standing in the dead hush of Grave Ridge with his brother's voice riding the wind, and the next, he was gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles, breath fogging the windshield. The keys were already in the ignition. Did I ever take them out? He could still smell the woods on his skin, wet bark and cold moss, tinged with something metallic, like rust or old blood. His jeans were damp from the knees down, and a dark smear ran along his right forearm, but there was no cut, no bruise. His fingers were trembling too much to light a cigarette, so he just drove. Gravel spat under the tires as he turned back onto the access road, trees slashing across the windshield like black bone fingers. The wind hadn't let up. It chased him now, whispering in the mirrors, breathing against the back of his neck. He didn't go home, not yet. Instead, Ray pulled into the lot behind the Split Antler, the only bar for 20 miles. It was early, barely past noon, but the place was open. It always was. A neon Bud Light sign buzzed weakly in the dusty window. Inside, the smell hit him first. Cigarette ash soaked into wood grain, old fryer oil clinging to the air, and something sour beneath it all, like forgotten fruit. Charlie stood behind the counter, polishing a glass that didn't need polishing. He looked up and nodded. "Ray, haven't seen you in a while." Ray slid onto the bar stool. "Gimme something strong." Charlie poured without a word. Ray knocked it back. It burned like judgment. For a minute, neither spoke. The only sounds were the soft clink of glass and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then, "You been out by the ridge?" Charlie asked. Ray didn't answer. Charlie nodded like that was answer enough. "Shouldn't have done that," he said. "The wind's bad this time of year, gets under the skin." Ray leaned in, his voice low. "I saw something out there, someone, my brother." Charlie didn't flinch. "Ain't yours anymore," he said. "Might wear his shape, might speak with his voice. But that's not Tommy." Ray stared. "You're telling me you believe in this shit?" Charlie looked at him, not with fear, with pity. "Ray, we don't believe. We remember." He tapped a finger against his temple. "The wind don't come for the faithful. It comes for the ones who lie to themselves, for the ones who buried truth and called it mercy." Ray's mouth went dry. "I was a kid. It was an accident." Charlie poured another drink, but didn't slide it forward. "Then why are you still running from it?" Outside, the wind picked up again, a low, mournful howl that snuck beneath the door and into the bones. The lights in the bar dimmed slightly, or maybe it just felt that way. Ray stood abruptly, chair scraping loud against the floor. "I need to get home." Charlie said nothing as Ray walked out. But as the door swung shut, Ray heard it, just faintly in the gust that blew through behind him. "Don't forget, the wind won't." When Ray pulled into his driveway, Leona was already on the porch. She was drawing, kneeling in the dirt with a stick, dragging lines into the earth like they meant something. Spirals, hooks, one shape he almost recognized, the old pattern etched into his mother's bone necklace, the one she'd always hidden beneath her shirt. "What ray you drawing, baby?" he called out. She looked up, smiled faintly. "Nothing." But as he got closer, he saw the stick she held was red on the end, not with paint, with blood. "Where'd you get that?" Leona tilted her head. "From the lady in the tree. She told me to tell you something." Ray knelt, heart pounding. "What did she say?" Leona leaned in, lips near his ear. "You're not the only one with lies." And for just a moment, her breath didn't smell like her. It smelled like river water and rot. Chapter 6. The ones who remembered too much. By morning, the town already knew. Not by gossip, not by phones or whispers passed through diner booths. They just knew. The kind of knowing that seeped through brick and porch beams. That rode the breath of someone behind you without ever being spoken aloud. When Ray stepped into the general store for a coffee, the room changed. Mrs. Alford, who'd pinched his cheeks as a boy, who'd comforted his mother the day after Tommy's funeral, suddenly couldn't meet his eyes. Roy Gaspard, who once worked with Ray in the forestry service, muttered something under his breath and stepped into the next aisle. Even the kid at the register, barely 17, eyes still soft and hopeful, wouldn't take Ray's cash directly. Just pointed to the counter and mumbled, "I'll ring it in later." They weren't angry, they were afraid. And worse, they understood. Back outside, Ray sat in his truck, engine off. The coffee steamed in the cup holder, but he didn't touch it. Instead, he watched the trees lining the edge of town, wind bending the tops into slow arcs, like they were bowing toward him. Or worse, following him. Something crunched behind him. He turned. A man stood beside the passenger door. Thin, sun-spotted hands, denim overalls. He didn't speak, just held something out. A leather pouch, weathered and cracked, tied with twine. Something inside shifted with a dull clink. Ray took it carefully. "What is it?" The man didn't answer right away, just stared at him, eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. "We all hear it once," the man said finally. "That's the rule. One truth for every name you forget." Ray frowned. "What?" The man's hand trembled as he pointed at the pouch. "Your mother carried that. After you went away, said you'd need it someday." Then he turned, walked off, didn't say another word. Ray untied the twine. Inside, dried sage. A jagged rock coated in black soot. A snapped bone no larger than a finger, carved with tiny symbols. And at the bottom, a photo of him and Tommy. But the background was wrong, not the creek, not the house. It was the tree, the wound tree, the one from his vision. And behind them, half faded by time, a third figure, distant, barely visible. Wearing the same coat Ray had seen in the woods the night before, his own. He drove straight to the community center, not out of logic, out of instinct. If the town already knew, then someone had answers, had to. But when he stepped inside, the chatter stopped cold. 4 people stood around the bulletin board. They all turned in unison. A woman in a pale sweater stepped forward. It was Deacon Jessup's wife, Miriam. She smiled politely. "Ray, you shouldn't be here." "Why not?" he said, stepping further in. "Because I heard it. Because I remember something." Her smile faltered, but she didn't deny it. "It's not that you remember," she said softly. "It's that the wind answered you." He blinked. "You've heard it too." She hesitated, looked around. The others wouldn't meet his gaze. "Not like you. Most of us, we drink from the stillness. We forget. That's the whole point." "Forget what?" She stared at him for a long time. "What we did to deserve the silence." Ray stumbled out into the cold daylight, breathing hard. All around him, the town looked the same: gas pumps, painted window signs, telephone poles leaning just a little too much. But now it all felt like a shell, like a play. They knew, all of them. Maybe not the kids, maybe not the drifters, but the old families, the lifers, the ones who stayed while Ray left and came back. They'd made a choice. And now he was remembering what they chose to forget. The wind picked up. This time it didn't speak in words, just names. Over and over in a dozen voices, some of them familiar, some of them long dead. Each name struck him like a nail in the spine. The last one was his. Raymond Elgin Key. And then, we're not done. Chapter 7. Speak into the hollow. Ray didn't go home. Not because he was afraid. That part had passed. No, this was something colder, heavier, like gravity applied to his name alone. He drove until the town faded in the rearview mirror. Dirt roads giving way to frost-laced timber trails that only locals ever remembered. And even then, only at a whisper. The land felt watchful. Not alive, not sentient, just aware. Like an old animal sleeping lightly with one eye half open. In his lap sat the leather pouch, his mother's. The sage inside had crumbled into dust, and the bone charm smelled faintly of dried blood. Not metaphorical blood, real, coppery and old. It coated his fingertips the moment he touched it, though the surface looked clean. He didn't know what each piece meant, but he knew where it had to go. The place he wasn't supposed to return to. The scar in the land where he and Tommy made their first lie. He parked at the edge of the tree line, just shy of the old hunting trail. His flashlight flickered as he stepped into the shadow of the ridge. The air smelled of thawed loam and cedar bark, but also of something sweet, like burnt sugar, like offering smoke. He hadn't seen this part of the forest in 15 years. Not since they were kids. Not since the summer Tommy fell and cracked his ribs on the flat stone by the creek, and Ray told everyone it was an accident. But it wasn't. Tommy hadn't tripped. Ray pushed him, just once. Just hard enough to hear the wind leave his brother's lungs. He thought it would be over then, the jealousy, the guilt, the attention their mother always gave Tommy instead of him. But that guilt never ended. It followed him like breath steam on a winter night. The trail narrowed until it became something older, not a man-made path, but a game trail. Barely visible. Something moved above him in the canopy, crows maybe, or the memory of crows. He came to the hollow tree, not a metaphor, a literal one. It stood alone near the creek bank, its base split open by rot. A hollow wound in bark, deep enough to crawl into. The kind of tree that kids make up ghost stories about. The kind their parents pretend isn't there. The kind he and Tommy dared each other to approach on storm nights. He crouched, reached into the pouch, pulled the bone charm out, and with it the small stone, the one stained with black soot. He laid them at the edge of the hollow. The wind rose, no rustling, no howl, just a shifting pressure, like the air inside his lungs was being read aloud by something ancient. "I remember you." Ray froze. It wasn't in his head. The voice came from inside the tree. "You came again. You left, but you remembered." He crouched lower, whispered into the opening. "What are you?" The bark flexed, like a breath. "I'm what you forget. I'm the mouth of the wind. I take the weight you bury and give it roots." Ray shook. "What do you want?" The tree creaked. "To finish the confession." He stepped back instinctively. His flashlight blinked once, twice, then died. Silence returned, but not emptiness. He could feel something inside the tree watching him, not with eyes, with memory. "Then, one more truth," the voice said. "Then you can go home." Ray swallowed. He thought of Leona, of the way her voice had changed. of the look in her eyes when she said, "The wind told me what you did." He looked into the hollow and spoke. "Tommy didn't fall. I pushed him. I meant to scare him, just scare him, but he hit the stone. He cried for Mom, and I ran. I left him, bleeding." Silence. Then the tree shuddered, and from inside it came something small and wrapped in leaves. Ray reached for it. A tooth, human, tiny, milk-white. He remembered pulling it from Tommy's mouth after the fall, thought he'd lost it. He hadn't. The wind had kept it, and now it gave it back. As Ray turned to leave, something moved in the trees, not chasing. Following, he didn't look back, but he heard his brother's voice, soft and wrong. Now she remembers too. Chapter 8. What the daughter knows. Leona Vale hadn't spoken in over 2 hours. She sat on the floor of her bedroom, bare feet pressed flat against the creaking hardwood, fingers trembling where they clutched the faded crocheted afghan her grandmother left behind. The window was open, just a crack, but the wind still found its way in, whispering through the vent above her closet like breath across a bottle's rim. She knew that sound wasn't normal. It said names, sometimes hers, sometimes others. It had started after her dad left last night. She'd heard the engine rev, watched the brake lights disappear down the main road, and then the house had gone still. Not empty, still, like something was holding its breath in every room. She didn't scream when the voice came. She wanted to, but she knew screaming wouldn't help. Not in a town like this. Not when the wind had already decided what it wanted to say. Earlier, she'd found a note in her backpack. Folded twice, written on yellow-lined paper in pencil, blocky, stiff handwriting. What did you see under the floorboards? There was no name, no explanation, but she knew. 2 weeks ago, she'd lost a key. The one to the little footlocker her dad kept locked in the crawlspace closet. While looking for it, she pried up one of the rotted boards near the water heater. Beneath it, cloth, dirt-stained, tied in twine. Inside, a photo, badly burned, of a young boy in a hospital gown. A newspaper clipping dated over 20 years ago. A bracelet, and something that looked like a tooth. She never told her father, because the wind had whispered, "Don't," and she had listened. Her phone buzzed. A message from Grandma Vera, timestamped 20 minutes ago. "Leave the house. Don't trust what he brings back with him." She blinked. Vera had been dead for 3 years, and the number was hers. Leona stood. The wind shifted again. Warmer this time, almost wet, like breath against the back of her neck. The curtains lifted and dropped in a rhythm too slow for nature, almost like lungs. Then a voice, not from outside, from her closet. "You left him, you left your brother. You knew what would happen." She backed away, bumping into her desk. Her water glass fell, shattered, but no water came out, only dust. "You see him now, don't you?" The voice continued. Behind the wind, between the trees, where his blood soaked the rock. She didn't remember a brother, but the voice said she did, and her heart knew it was right. Footsteps downstairs. The front door opened. Her father's voice. "Leona," she didn't answer. She stared at the mirror. In it, her reflection was crying, but she wasn't, and someone stood just behind her in the glass, masked in bark and wind and memory. She turned. No one there, but the voice from the closet spoke again. "He's come home wrong. He's not your father anymore. He gave his name to the hollow, and now it's yours." Chapter 9. The ones who remember the snow. By the time Ray returned to town, it was snowing again. Not the usual light dusting that signaled late winter in the southern plains. This was dense, wet, clinging. The kind of snowfall that made breath disappear as soon as it left your lips. The kind that muffled sound like burial cloth. He parked 2 blocks from his house. Couldn't bring himself to pull into the drive. The engine idled. His pulse didn't. In the mirror, his eyes looked glassy. Not tired, not red, just still. Like they weren't sure if they belonged to him anymore. His neck still ached from where Constance touched him. A thin, raised scar, barely a line, had bloomed behind his ear overnight, and no amount of scrubbing had taken the smell of sap from his skin. He reached for the handle. But before he could move, a knock came at the window. 3 sharp raps. He jumped, turned. An old woman stood there in the snow, wrapped in layers of faded wool. Her cane tapped once against the gravel. Her eyes narrowed. He hadn't seen her in years. Maggie Softcloud, last of the original winter keepers. one of the elders who sealed the mountain pass every year when the wind changed direction. Everyone said she'd gone half-mad since her husband passed, but Ray remembered something else. Something his mother once whispered when he was a boy. "Maggie knows what the wind wants. Don't ask her unless you're ready to give it." He rolled down the window slow. "Deputy Vale," she said, voice clear despite her age. "We need to walk." "It's late," he replied. "It always is," she said, already turning toward the woods. He followed her to the old church. Not the white clapboard one on the hill, but the original longhouse, the stone one, half swallowed by moss and snow, tucked between two bluffs like a secret. Inside, the air smelled of pine pitch and candle wax. No electricity, just heat from the stone hearth and the scent of cedar ash. Maggie sat near the fire and gestured for him to kneel. He didn't question her, because in the hours since the hollow he hadn't trusted his own voice. "You opened it," she said without accusation. "I didn't mean to," Ray replied. "Doesn't matter, it remembers now." She leaned forward. "Tell me what it said." Ray hesitated. "It said it knows me, that it took my name, that it gave it to her." "Your daughter," he nodded. Maggie's face fell. "Then it's already feeding." "Feeding on what?" She reached into a basket beside the hearth and pulled out an old leather-bound book. No title, just a symbol etched into the cover, a ring of pine branches circling a hollow knot. She opened it. Inside, lists, names, generations of them. "These are the ones the wind took pieces from, not all at once. It doesn't eat. It remembers so deeply that you forget." She ran a wrinkled finger down the page. "Your mother's in here, your brother too." Ray blinked. "You knew about Tommy. I was the one who told your mother to bury his name." Ray's breath caught. Maggie stood. "Names are seeds," she said softly, "and the wind plants them when the soil's raw. That hollow tree is not a place. It's a wound, and every time someone confesses into it, it grows." Ray rose slowly to his feet. "Then how do we stop it?" Maggie didn't answer right away. She stared into the fire. "Then you can't, not anymore." "Why not?" "Because your daughter didn't just hear it. She answered." Outside the longhouse, the wind howled. But inside the flames, something else moved. Not shadow, not smoke. Something older stretching thin across the stone walls, listening. Chapter 10. Speak no lies. Ray didn't drive home. He walked. The snow was thigh-deep by now, and the road had vanished into the blankness, but he knew the path. The wind helped. It pushed him not hard, not cold, just directed. Like a hand at the small of his back, guiding gently toward penance. By the time his house came into view, all the lights were on. The porch lamp flickered in pulses, too regular to be broken. Morse code, maybe. A heartbeat. A warning. Inside, it was silent. The kind of silence that's only possible when something else is listening. Leona sat at the kitchen table, legs crossed, her hair still wet from the shower. She wore one of Ray's old flannels, sleeves rolled up, fingers clenched tight around a ceramic cup filled with water. He stopped in the doorway. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" She didn't respond. The wind hissed through the vents. He stepped closer. That's when he saw the thread. Thin, black, sewn across her lips, but not crude, not bloody or torn, neat, like someone had practiced. Like she'd let them, his chest locked. "Leona," she raised her eyes, and in them, for the briefest moment, he saw someone else. Not evil, not possessed, witnessed. "What did it tell you?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. She reached down and slid something across the table toward him. A note, one line, written in shaky pencil. "I remember what you did behind the shed." Ray's mouth went dry. "That was a long time ago," he said, barely audible. She nodded. "Another note. You thought I didn't know." His knees buckled slightly. He dropped into the chair across from her. The walls creaked. The air grew dense, not heavy, full, like it was being breathed by something far too large for the house. He couldn't stop his hand from shaking. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. She tilted her head. Another note. But it did. Ray pressed his palms to the table. The cup between them began to rattle. A low hum filled the air, no source. No pitch, just a vibration behind the teeth in the bones. And in it, faintly buried, came a voice. Not Leona's, not his. "I remember your mother's voice, Ray, the way she wept when the snow came early. I remember the other name you buried, the little one, the one you swore you didn't see fall." The house breathed, and the cup cracked. "Stop," Ray whispered. "You don't know what that kind of remembering does." Leona stood. She opened her mouth and the thread slid free, not broken, unwound, like it had only been sleeping there. She didn't speak. She didn't have to, because he remembered. The scream, the hollow thud, the stone slick with snow and something warmer, the promise he made his mother. You didn't see it. You don't speak of it. You carry it. And the wind will carry you. Leona reached out, pressed her fingers to his chest. And in that touch, Ray felt the weight of every word he never said. The window shattered, not from a storm, from release. A sound like unspoken truth escaping a coffin. And from the dark beyond the glass, a figure watched. Not a ghost, not a god, just a shape in the wind with a mouth made of everyone who'd ever stayed quiet too long. And it whispered. Now she knows. Chapter 11. The first silence, the record was brittle. It came wrapped in butcher paper, sealed with pine resin, buried beneath the altar stone of the longhouse. Maggie Softcloud had found it that morning, cradled in the arms of an effigy, a woman carved from ashwood, her mouth open, head tilted skyward in silent scream. The phonograph they played it on wheezed like a dying animal, the arm trembling as it touched the groove. Then a hiss, a flicker of static, and a voice. Day 12. The snow hasn't stopped. Father says it means something is listening. Ray stood in the corner, hands still trembling from the night before. Leona sat beside Maggie, quiet, her lips untouched now. But her eyes, they didn't blink. The voice on the record was young, a girl maybe 10, but her tone was calm, too calm. We weren't supposed to tell anyone about what came through the old elm, about the words in the bark. But Mother saw the shape standing near the well, said it had no face, just wind where a head should be. That's when she started sewing her mouth. Ray closed his eyes. It wasn't just folklore. This wasn't the product of a single event, or even a single generation. It was generational rot. Brother asked why it speaks different to each of us. I said it probably speaks the truth we hide. The record hissed again, skipping slightly. Then the voice returned, quieter now. It told me I could be clean, that if I gave it something precious, it would forget the other things I said. I think it means my name. Ray turned to Maggie. Who was she? Maggie stared at the flame, her voice flat. Emmeline Catchburn, first recorded confessor. What happened to her? No one remembers. You mean? No, Ray, I mean no one, not even her family. The moment she gave her name to the wind, it wasn't hers anymore. When the record ended, the air in the longhouse felt thinner, not colder, emptier, like something had left the room with that final whisper. Outside, the wind began to howl again, not loud, not fast, measured, almost like a breath held between words. It's growing, Maggie said. What is? Leona asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. The hollow. Every name, every lie, every silence, it adds to it. And now it remembers Ray. She turned to him. And if it remembers you, it'll come for the ones you love. Ray didn't speak, couldn't, not until the fire cracked and a puff of black ash spilled across the stone floor. There in the soot, the wind left something behind. A word, scrawled in spirals, like someone had dragged a fingertip through warm blood. Confess. Chapter 12. Confession. They buried Maggie at dawn. No words, no priest. Just the hollow thud of shovels in frost-packed dirt and the low wind moving through the pine like breath between prayers. Ray stood over the grave long after the others left. Leona beside him, hands in her coat pockets, eyes distant. She didn't scream, Leona whispered. No, Ray said. Not even when the wind went inside her. Ray nodded. She knew it would come for one of us. She made sure it chose her. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was watchful. That night, Ray wrote, not a report, not a statement, a confession. He sat alone in the kitchen, lit only by the soft glow of the oil lamp and the sound of wind pressing gently against the glass. Not howling, not clawing, just waiting. He dipped the pen. The ink smelled like copper. To the ones I love and to the ones I've buried, there's something in the wind that doesn't forget, and it remembers what I never said aloud. He wrote about the boy behind the shed, his cousin, Jamie, how the game of hide and seek turned to cries for help, how he didn't go looking, how, when they found Jamie's body in the creek, Ray lied to the elders, to the police, to his own mother. He wrote about the winter that followed, how the winds turned sharp, how his dreams grew teeth, and how every time he heard his name in the wind, since it was Jamie's voice saying it. By midnight, the air inside the house had stilled. No creaks, no hum of the heater. Even the refrigerator had gone quiet, like the house itself was holding its breath. Ray stepped outside barefoot. The snow didn't feel cold anymore. The road ahead, the one they always closed in winter, stretched wide and clean in the moonlight. No tracks, no fences, just invitation. He held the letter in both hands, pressed it flat against the old elm at the edge of the drive, and he whispered, "I remember. I am sorry. I am ready." The wind moved, not around him, through him. It filled his lungs, his veins, the hollow behind his eyes. And in it, a whisper, dozens, hundreds, not angry, not cruel, relieved. "You spoke. You opened the door. Now we can rest." Ray fell to his knees in the snow. Above, in the branches, a dozen names etched themselves into the bark in slow, curling letters. His among them, the first to be written, not taken. When Leona came outside, she found the letter still nailed to the tree, but Ray was gone. No blood, no footprints, just a warm breeze rising out of the snow like breath from a sleeping mouth. She didn't cry, didn't scream, she only whispered, "I forgive you." And from the trees, the wind answered back, just once, "Thank you." You made it back for now, but the things in the dark never truly leave, do they? They watch, they wait, and perhaps they remember you now too. If you want to hear more, if you dare to listen again, step back into the shadows. Like the video, subscribe, but know this, some doors once opened do not close so easily.